So this morning, I'm going to be talking about the fusion of spiritual fires. Last week, I talked about spiritual fire and initiation. So today is really a progressive process. And then next week, I will also be talking about the fusion of fires, spiritual fires again. It is an abstract concept, but it's very real when you begin to experience it. It has everything to do with our human constitution. Most of us are really familiar with our physical body, and that's just pretty much it. We have a sensibility when we are really emotional that we have an astral or emotional body. And when we become bewildered or confused or just not thinking very clearly, we realize we have a mental body. So it's these three bodies that I talked about quite a bit last week. And these three bodies are reflective of what we call the material or internal fires, also pranic energy. Then we have the higher fire, which I'll be really focusing on today, and how these higher fires will come in and replace all the debris of our physical, emotional, and mental bodies while we begin to take the first, the second, the third, and the fourth initiations of consciousness. If this information is new to you, welcome. It's very exciting. It's going to blow your mind, and you're going to think, what? And this is why I say, just listen to the CD or watch the DVD or YouTube video 2 or 3 times, and then it's like you're training your brain. There's a groove now being impressed in your brain, and there'll be something inside of you that says, well, I may not understand all the words, but I really understand the concept. And then you're going to remember some of your experiences during meditation or as you were engaged in a sacrificial service in which you sensed the burning of these fires in your beingness and how it changed your way of thinking, how it expanded your consciousness. So as we recall these experiences, then the information I'm sharing this morning and from last week will become more real to you and no longer just an abstract concept, but reality. The first thing I want to let you know is that our webinar team that's in the back of the room, and particularly Terry, I talked with him this week, and he's going to try to put up a couple of diagrams. So if you're on the webinar, you're going to be able to see the diagrams. And if you're here in the room, you'll have to suffer with my artwork. But this is the first image I'd like you to put in your mind, that this is the human body, and then this is the energy currents going on around the body called the aura. Oh, look, they've got it up on the eye. Oh, I'm so excited. It's working. Thank you, Terry. So this image, if you'll keep it in your mind, it'll make more sense what I'm saying to you. And the other image that I'll be talking about are these lower and higher ethers that surround the body. Now, the lower ethers is what surrounds our physical body. And these lower ethers are 4 in nature, starting with the lowest, which is called the chemical ether. And then the next more refined ether is called the life ether. And then the second from the top, being more refined, is called the light ether. And finally, we have the reflecting ether. Now, these 4 ethers are what surround our physical body. Now we have cosmic ethers, and this is what our human soul is surrounded by. the cosmic ethers. The cosmic or higher ethers also have 4 levels. Now we can start from the top, which is called the divine plane, which is the first cosmic etheric plane, and its color is ruby. It's a ruby fire. Then the second cosmic etheric plane is the monadic plane, and it has a red-orange fire. The third cosmic etheric is on the atmic plane, and its fire is yellow in color. And then the buddhic plane, which is the 4th plane, the 4th cosmic ether is blue fire. Now, if you're at all psychic, or if you have a sensitivity of color around and about you, you can see and experience and recognize these fires as they are being expressed by a human being. Now, the word ether, it's important we understand ether. This is not like the ether that, we used to be given when we had surgery, remember? And they put us out and we had no idea until we woke up, that we're still in existence. This is different. Ether means fiery energy or fiery energy currents. I like to think of it more as fiery energy currents. So you can even kind of imagine these fiery energy currents with this particular diagram. And these currents are continuously moving throughout our aura. Like currents of energy, the lower fires and higher fires flow around us, then out into space, and then back around our personality. They go around us into space and then back around our personality. Now, what's interesting is that the human soul is between these fires. And you have to think about that a little bit. The destiny of our soul, our human unfolding soul, is to replace the lower fires by the higher fires. You can just imagine, and I'll be elaborating on this in a few minutes, but we know fire burns and purifies. When we consider that the higher fires are being pulled down into the lower fires and replacing the lower fires, there is going to be an effect, right? So we're going to feel it. It's not something that is just imaginary or beyond our scope of understanding or experience. We actually are going to have that knowledge based on our own experience of how that transmutation and transformation and transfiguration of these energies, occur. As our soul awakens, he begins to function more and more in the higher ethers. Now, this functioning, how's this functioning occur? That soul uses a certain percentage of the substance of the higher ethers through our words, through our feelings, and through our thoughts and actions. See what I'm saying? So even though the idea, if this is new to you, sounds abstract, you're seeing the practicality of it, that it is very real. It's not pretend, it's not imagination. It actually occurs. So it is through such a process that the higher ethers penetrate into the lower ethers. The higher ethers penetrate into the lower ethers and replace them. At the first initiation, when 25% of the higher ethers replace the lower ethers, this is when we have taken that first initiation. So that means 25% of these higher ethers are coming down and replacing the lower ethers that are manifesting or expressing through our thoughts, words, actions, and feelings. Now, you can imagine that's 25% only. The second initiation, 50% of the substance of these higher ethers penetrate the lower ethers and replace them. To me, this is so exciting. It's, you know, it's so real, it's so substantial. We know that through our own striving, this is a possibility. This is why, if you look at your life 10 years ago and you're the same person, you know that this process is not taking place. This transmutation process has not yet occurred. So now is the time to get going. Third initiation takes place when 75% of these higher ethers replace the lower ethers, and that means now we're going to pass through the experience of the third initiation. So 75% of these ethers, of these currents of fire, are passing through and penetrating into actually our atoms and our chakras and the whole auric field of our personality life, and bringing about change. During this time, well, let me not forget the fourth initiation. It's our future. The fourth initiation is when 100% of the higher ethers replace the lower ethers. That's 100%, which means that person is near the end of the fourth initiation. So during this time, our human body is slowly becoming ethereal. So for example, the great ones, the masters, these great initiates, they have physical bodies, but they are mostly ethereal. Now, if you have had the joy of the experience of seeing a great one, you recognize, initially when you recognize that great person, it looks like a human being, physical body, just like what we have. What sets aside that great one from ourselves, first of all, is the vibration, the frequency of that individual, that great one, but also they can do things that we cannot. You know, and we read science fiction novels about these experiences or such type of being where they can walk through a wall. That's when you know for sure. It's so exciting and so shocking at the same time. The replacement of the lower ethers with the higher ethers is called the process of transmutation. The process of transmutation. So where it is true that all of our efforts to learn and to study and to think and to will help us in this process of transmutation, the surprising part of all of this is that until our beingness comes into existence, it is not possible to take an initiation. Obviously, I don't have time. This would take 2 or 3 hours to really break these ideas down into a detailed way so that we could understand, what does it mean? I thought if I studied and thought and made an effort to learn and so forth, that this would be the process of transmutation. It isn't. Basically, that is like a jump start into an awareness that we are more than what we are today. We have the potential of being more than what we are today. That's where divine discontent takes place. And then the urge to change and to be somebody takes place, occurs. And then we begin to strive, we begin to meditate and change our day-to-day lives, our activities, our way of thinking, and so forth, engage in sacrificial service, become virtuous people, then our beingness comes into existence. So again, it is not possible to go through the process of transmutation as I've expressed the higher ethers and these currents of fire penetrating into and replacing the lower ethers. It's not possible until our beingness is coming into existence. Transmutation is a process when the higher atoms replace 25% of the lower atoms, causing the fires of matter to fuse with the fires of prana. And this is what I talked about last week, the internal fires. During this process, when the higher atoms replace the lower atoms, now the energy of the lower chakras are replaced by the energy of the higher chakras. I just, just to let you know that in the future we're going to have more diagrams that we'll be able to put up on the webinar on YouTube and here. We just didn't have time this week, to get it all done. But some of you have these diagrams in your mind anyway and understand it. So at this occurrence, this is the effect. The effect is this. The person, this is only 25%, okay, 25% of the transmutation process. The person no longer desires coarse, bloody food, alcohol, or drugs. He no longer yields to unhealthy sex. He can no longer stand. He can no longer stand in the vibration of hatred and anger and fear and jealousy and revenge and greed. Also, he can no longer stand the vibration of ugly, base thoughts. But at this stage, he is not yet totally in control. This is why I believe, in ancient times and even in today's times, when a person is coming into beingness and this transmutation process of the fiery currents of this energy coming into and beginning to replace the lower ethers, that we begin to pull away from mass consciousness. Or that when we find ourselves needing to work and that our jobs change, we can no longer handle being in a profession or a career or surrounded by people, co-workers or a boss that is descriptive, of what I just said, that we can't handle. This is why also when you are with somebody of that nature, you'll be sick for 2 or 3 days afterwards because your sensitivities are increasing. And then eventually they'll balance out and you'll know how to handle and repulse that energy, or sometimes not. Also during this process, the atoms of the higher ethers are penetrating throughout your entire aura. Now, what does this mean? This means the unhealthy, disturbed, or distorted atoms are replaced by healthy, rhythmic, and radiating atoms. Isn't that wonderful? It's so beautiful. This transmutation process, just know this, is a long-lasting process until all the lower ethers are replaced by the substance of the higher ethers. During this period, there is a healing process occurring until the human soul builds his vehicles with the highest quality possible. Now, when the old atoms are replaced with new and healthy ones, bless you, through the transmutation process, the urge to deceive, exploit, or slander others due to a disorder or sickness in the mental or emotional body disappears. And the human being now begins to act in a more constructive way. See, this is how we can measure. This is our standard of measurement for ourselves. It's our standard of measurement about who we're going to work for, who's going to be our boss, and so forth. Who we're going to choose to be our friends. Until eventually we find our soul group, and then we find that common denominator of transmutation, transformation, undergoing transfiguration. And then we all serve one another as shock absorbers while we are experiencing that fiery energy current. Now, unless transmutation is a fact, this is important to hear, particularly if you're a counselor of any magnitude. No matter how much advice you give to others to act in the spirit of beauty and goodness and righteousness and joy and freedom and striving in sacrificial service, they will continue to live according to their various urges and drive, conditioned by their sick bodies. This is a very sad thing, but it's the process of life. You do what you can. So this is where, if you are a counselor and you see that, let's say you're counseling an alcoholic and there is no change, then release that person, because they are not engaged in striving and they really have no desire to change themselves. They're just going through the motion. So save yourself for a person who comes to you and says, I'm an alcoholic, I need your help. Or I'm a drug addict and I need your help. Then you put them on the path of these wonderful 7 principles. And then together you're going to watch their beingness coming into expression, which is very beautiful. And they'll no longer be conditioned by their sick bodies. Every time we are depressed, confused, in fear, angry, jealous, or revengeful, we damage our subtle bodies. So the old matter must be replaced. See that damage? We have to replace and heal. And the way we do that is through transmutation, allowing this higher energy, higher fires come in and transmute the lower. Transmutation in the mental plane slowly wipes out ego, separatism, vanity, and prejudice. It is not necessary to work on eliminating them. Just increase the process of transmutation and all will be healed. This is why we are told to live the virtues. As a muddy pool needs new currents of fresh water to become clear, similarly, new substance is needed to make our aura clear. Now, when the higher ethers replace 50% of the lower ethers, we're in the process of taking which initiation? Exactly, the second. That person goes through a process of transformation. So we've gone through transmutation. Now we're beginning the process of transformation, and the fires of prana and matter are going to fuse with the fires of the mind. These fires are also called solar fire. And this occurs at the base of the skull in etheric matter. At the base of the skull in etheric matter is where the transformation takes place. Not only does the person change physically, but also his astral and mental bodies change in appearance. People living in the 3 worlds notice this change and see the increasing beauty of these bodies. So you can't pretend. It's just right there. These centers and senses on the 3 planes go through a blooming process. This blooming process is the result of the lotus, or the chalice, as it unfolds. And as it unfolds, there's a rare beauty emanating flowers of many colors. As our dense body absorbs more etheric substance and discharges more physical atoms, the physical body becomes more etheric. It is so beautiful. It becomes more powerful. Our body is assimilating this etheric matter and uses it as its source of superior energy. What is also occurring is this. If that wasn't enough. I know, it's hard to keep up, but this is why, again, I'm repeating myself, but, listen to this, 2 or 3 times and you'll begin to assimilate it. The etheric walls between the physical body, astral body, and mental bodies, and between the mental and intuitional bodies are becoming what is termed rarefied. These etheric walls are becoming rarefied, translucent, and transparent. And kind of a side note here, you'll find limitations, which we call the ring past knot, evaporating. Things that you couldn't do before, you can do now. Your perceptions, your understanding, your sensitivity is increasing. This allows our consciousness to register with more complete information. Gosh, it's real hard not to get off subject here. There's so much I'd like to share with you. Oh, I'm going to do it. Excuse me. It is. Okay, basically it's this. We used to have this much understanding, and we thought we were really great because we now have a PhD. Okay? Now, through this rarefied substance coming in through these etheric walls, now we have this much depth of understanding and perception, and clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairsensitivity. It's so incredible. This is why you just have to laugh at somebody who has an encyclopedic mind and they think that they are brilliant human beings. They're nothing if they haven't gone through this transmutation and transformation process. They know only what they've been taught by those who've known before them. What we're going to do in this sensitivity is we're going to have, this is through the transformation process, we will have occasional clairaudient and clairvoyant experiences, which is a little unnerving in the beginning because you begin to hear thoughts of people when they are saying beautiful and wonderful things to you and their thoughts are something different. Or sometimes their thoughts are so loud in your ears you think they are speaking to you, and you reflect what you thought they spoke to you, and they look at you and say, how did you know that? And then eventually you learn to keep your mouth shut. But you know. Your etheric, astral, and mental centers coordinate in a higher degree and impress the recordings on the refined brain. So, for example, let's take the astral body. The astral body will change in form and shape. Our astral centers will unfold and radiate more light. Our astral eyes and other senses will pass through a process of metamorphosis and no longer look like a gray shadow with dark stripes on it. It all changes into a beautiful, beautiful robe. In the mental plane, our mental body becomes organized and harmonized, a harmonized whole with beautiful colors, with an emerging and forming chalice. I'm moving rapidly because I have to get through the whole talk this morning, so bear with me. The centers and senses develop further. See, this is the process of our beingness coming into existence. We begin to see certain energy formations that in the future will be used as communication centers between the lower and higher worlds. What is perhaps somewhat surprising but important to know, but I just pretty much have already said this, is that those who have an encyclopedic knowledge and are professors on the physical plane, they did not yet pass through the transmutation and transformation process. What happened, what occurs, is that they appear in the mental plane as little half-formed embryos. Little half-formed embryos. Sometimes they have ugly figures, and sometimes they are like monsters if their store of information is related to committing crimes and terrorism, of war, exploitation, and totalitarianism. When the atoms on the higher ethers replace the lower ethers by 75%, now we begin to go through the process of what? Exactly, transfiguration. Our physical body becomes 75% etheric, and our etheric body assimilates 75% of the higher ether. Now this is in part what happened. On the physical plane, the physical atoms radiate light, and the physical senses become highly sensitive and more accurate. Many sicknesses or disorders of the body disappear, and the body becomes charged with a new supply of energy. Our body functions now in a more rhythmic manner. On the astral plane, the centers and senses operate 75% better. As a result, the person becomes more aware of the life going on in the astral plane. The person becomes able to serve in the astral plane, where people need every kind of help, as they do on the physical plane. And finally, coordination of the centers and senses of the mental plane advances. In this way, the consciousness of the person can use the astral senses in a balanced and controlled and logical way. On the mental plane, the 9 petals of the lotus begin to radiate out with a magnificent light. The mental centers and senses function at a 75% capacity, and a higher clairaudience and higher clairvoyance are experienced. Closer relationship between the human soul and your inner guide has now been established, and the personality life turns into a process of dedication to the divine plan. At the same time, the central point, listen to this, the central point in the lotus now projects a ray which coordinates all the fires in the body and releases the fires in the atoms of the 3 vehicles. The person then experiences the enlightenment process, which is called the transfiguration. After transfiguration, are you still with me? Okay. After transfiguration, the person's creativity in many fields and forms increases. She appears first as a talent. When more of the higher fires fuse with the lower fires, she appears as a multifaceted genius. as a great leader in the field where her destiny takes her. A real genius is one who is in contact with the hierarchy and the plan. So there's a new definition for genius. An arhat, when 100% of the higher ethers replace the lower ethers, you become an arhat and then a master. An arhat is one who no longer lives for herself, but for the whole humanity. All that she is, all that she has, all that she knows is sacrificed to the benefit of mankind. And we see examples of such people in the world today. They are our inspiration. The process of transmutation and transformation are not necessarily pleasant experiences. Sorry. Just like having the flu. That is so remarkably epidemic in this country right now. Is not a pleasant experience. This is not a pleasant experience either. Often when the lower etheric body is fused with the higher fires, what happens is that it exercises a heavy tension on the physical body. And when the etheric atoms try to move out the physical atoms, out of the physical body, these atoms create a resistance and tension, which manifests as psychosomatic disorders. Well, it's better to see your spiritual teacher than a psychiatrist at this point, or even a doctor. Naturopathic doctor is okay, safe. They won't put you on heavy drugs or put you in a cell. The decayed cells or problem cells in the body do not like to give up and perish. Like we don't like to give up our habits and our thises and that's. So they create various problems for us. Also, the new downpouring of energy causes agitation in the healthy cells and urges them to a new rhythm. This downpouring of energy urges our cells into a new rhythm. What is happening, maybe I can express this better in musical terms. It is like, if you've ever listened to a symphony orchestra, and we all have, we're playing, let's say, the first movement and the second movement, or listening to a great symphonic piece of music that has 3 or 4 movements. And halfway through that second movement, there's like this shift that goes from one key to the next, and that's called modulation. It's so eerily haunting and beautiful, and you wonder, how in the world could the composer take us from one key to the next key and have it sound so beautiful? But it takes adapting and adjusting because our ears hear it very differently. We feel it and experience it very differently. And then they always take us back. But this is a way to think about the whole process that's taking place of transmutation, transformation, and transfiguration. It's a modulation. And as we know, we have a personality note, and we have a soul note, and we have the note of the self. These notes are coming into expression, which changes our whole vibration and resonance. A new rhythm occurs. So this rearrangement and replacement processes, these are not always pleasant, and some people suffer considerably as the old and new rhythms clash. This is why we can't stand rock music anymore, some of us. This is why when some people begin to discipline their physical, emotional, mental bodies, do meditation and serious reading and try to control their bodies, they feel a great resistance and even experience new troubles and anxieties and problems. All these things are related to the process of transmutation and transformation. It sometimes causes pain and suffering on various levels of our personality. Certain layers accumulate dirt and are released in the dark caves of the emotional and mental body and bring them to the surface of the consciousness. This creates disturbances in your personal life, in your family life, in your group life, as you aspire toward the highest. But in the meantime, you can find yourself in embarrassing situations. In conclusion, just so you get a nice picture of the signs of what is happening, when the fusion of spiritual fires take place, know that the fires of matter and prana merge through the transmutation process near the shoulder blades. These two fires merge with the mental fires in the process of transformation at the base of the skull. And as these three fires merge with the fire of spirit in this process of we call transfiguration, this takes place a few inches above the head. Now, these fiery energies fuse regularly and systematically. Regularly and systematically, if we do our meditation and have a sincere dedication to the light. If we try to serve people and continuously expand our field of service, and if we strive daily for perfection in our deeds and words and thoughts. Those who are on the path of the threefold process have no fear of what happens around them, and they use events to increase the process of transmutation, transformation, and transfiguration. Okay. If you have questions, send them to me in an email because we are lacking in time. Did you like this? Okay, fantastic. Then see me next Sunday.